a quick before we get going on this mod, which is really decent. I would really recommend you do this because I don't. Those tones were pretty sick. Drove it into some high gain territory, and I don't think you would have gotten there without this mod. The bright cap mod is on the big cap, so the 4700 picofarad cap, and then my preamp volume is over at 8 or 3 o'clock. The master is at 3 o'clock. The setting, it's in the high setting, so preamp at 3, master at 3, treble at about 2 o'clock, middle is scooped, it's all the way to the left, bass is about 3 o'clock, and the presence is up at 2:30. And the Big Air is plugged in, but it's maxed out. There is a slight drop even with it plugged in. So those are the settings. And it was driven with the OCD. OCD is great. Volume is upwards of 10 o'clock. The drive is at 3, so we are adding a little drive to the signal. Volume is just off at noon, maybe 11:30. And then for part of that, I was using the MXR analog chorus, which I think is a great chorus because while there are a lot of great choruses out there, this is true bypass for one, no signal loss, and it holds up under a driven tone. Whereas so many choruses, they're great while the tone is clean, real pretty, but once you dirty up the tone, they fall apart and they sound terrible. Whereas the MXR analog chorus, it is a light chorus. It doesn't add a lot of color to your tone, which is good. I like that. It's just a hint of, like, what is that? And it holds up under high distortion, so it's great. It's like, like it's the Zakk Wylde vibe. And then the ESP guitar has EMGs in it, 8561. I think that's the set. It's the standard EMG set. And it's tuned to C sharp standard or drop B. But hopefully it sounds pretty good out there to you. In here, it sounds just devastating. So very happy with the mod, and I don't think I would get that tight of a high gain tone without it. So here we go. All right, here we go. I just have to really quickly show you this. This is my dad's office chair he bought in the 70s. Some, big old Art Deco crazy desk. It was really interesting. Solid wood deal. Leather back. But the craftsmanship that people used to put into the time and labor people used to put into putting stuff together, all this is hand nailed. The leather trim was all hand tacked with a separate bead piece around the edge. Great stuffing. But all these springs are tied in by hand, so they don't move around, and then the lacing is attached and nailed to the frame. Not only that, but then the lacing is sewn up into this crosshatch of fabric, really heavy burlap, which is also stitched to the springs. Cord comes up here, but that had to be pierced through after the fact. So just an incredible amount of work that people went into to put something nice together. I felt bad about getting rid of the desk, but just couldn't come up with a purpose for it. But this thing, I'm wondering if there isn't some sort of steampunk pedal board in there. I see two sides for a pedal board. I see an under thing that could go underneath. I see strap material. I see old red leather that could be up somewhere. Got this great sticker from where it was made, Wayfield, New York, looks like, or come on, focus, Wayland, New York. There's the original sticker, Gunlock Chair Company in New York. Old hardware and stuff. I could even work in those springs somehow, maybe. Anyway, we live in a really cool age where everything is easy, but the amount of know-how that we've lost is incredible too. Are we really gaining knowledge, or are we losing a lot of really good knowledge? I don't know.
Anyway, here's our stuff. The large cap, 4700, the 470 picofarad cap, and our little switch. Isn't it cute? Gosh, it's cute. And it's a on, off, on switch. You got to be careful with that, but I'll put the part numbers for all this stuff in the description. There's some of these switches that are on, off, and or on, or different variations. But this one is off in the middle, on both sides. So the middle tab will be our common to the other side of the circuit, and these will each attach to the other side of the switch, so we can switch in between these caps and or have the thing completely off, which is the way it is right now, and I really like it that way. Still finding a lot of good tones with this JCM 800. Really liking it. Okay, so here we go, getting into it. I'm going to try to park this little switch at the end of the sensitivity word, right in there. I might have to stick it up in there, but I'd like it here. And then I'd like the high and the low to mirror whether I'm using lots of attenuation or low. Not attenuation, but lots of filtering or just a little bit of filtering. So it's kind of, like high cut or low cut. So that's the goal. Said attenuator because I'm following up on a silly comment by somebody on my last video regarding the Power Soak, the Bagheera Power Soak attenuator on sale at Sweetwater for $50. What a great deal. This is the little 1000 picofarad cap that pulled out. And I've got my soldering iron, filed the tip, put a nice new tip on it. Not new tip, but filed the notch out of it and retinned it. Got my solder sucker over here, and I've got my bag of extra wire that I can be using, and I've got all my little shrink wrap pieces here. So I'm set. I got a football game on. We're set to get this done. Shouldn't take too long at all. We're ready for an update. So far, the biggest pain in the butt on this job has been having to turn the TV off every time I want to record something so I don't get a copyright infringement. But right now, the Eagles are getting whooped on by the 4-5 Indianapolis Colts. My gosh. All right, so here's my switch. I cut up three-inch pieces of white wire that I salvaged from this old thing. I don't know what it's from, but about 18 gauge wire, which is really nice. I got my shrink wrap on there. Tinned everything first before making the connections. You'll only be able to get one lead of the capacitor through the hole, but you can get the large lead through. So I went ahead and soldered those two leads together, and then I just clipped the small one off and put the big lead through the hole. And then I attached the wires, one wire to each of those capacitive leads, and twisted it up so that we don't have unwanted capacitance. Probably wouldn't in such a short strand, but you always hear it's good to have a twisted pair, right? So that just went over to my switch. One capacitor is on one side, the other capacitor is on the other side. And then I have my switch set so that it's in the position that would be switching to the big capacitor. All right, and then I poked those that big lead right down through there. I'll take my nippy cutter then, and I'll trim that real nice to the down by the PC board, and I'll trim off the common. My middle wire right here goes around and just goes to the other side of this. Right there. Okay. So those two that are right in the middle of the frame, these, boy, it's really hard to, you think you're pointing somewhere and you're not. But those two right there are the ones we're working with. And you can see that one of them is attached to the... Gosh, I'm just sorry about this. Let me get a pointer out. And it's amazing how even trying to stabilize a iPad, even for picturing, taking pictures of flowers or something, it's really hard to stabilize these things. The human body shakes a lot. So this one is attached to, I can't see it. This one out here comes up to our middle wiper. All right, this one attaches to the side of our potentiometer volume knob. There's lots of good descriptions on what bright cap circuits do, but basically capacitors allow high frequencies to pass, and depending on your choice of capacitor, they either allow more high frequencies or fewer high frequencies. Actually, more frequencies in general, high and mid for larger caps, or just high frequencies for the smaller value caps. But as you turn the volume down, resistance in that pot goes close to 500K. And so nothing wants to go through it. That's why the volume goes down, because the resistance in the pot gets really high. Having a capacitor across those leads allows higher frequencies to go ahead and bypass the volume knob and still go into the circuit. So that's why when you turn the volume down, the tone thins out. It's because the high frequencies are being allowed to pass and the low ones are not until you turn the volume way up, and then all the frequencies are represented in the tone, like it was in the non-master amps back in the 70s and 80s. Okay, so removing that bright cap is just a great mod by itself, but I'm going to take the lead of Pete Thorne and make this switchable in the middle position. It'll be, neither capacitor will be on, and we will have the effect of really no bright cap at all. But I'll have switching variability, and it's a cool and super easy mod. So I also found out where I want to drill. My word ends right there. The edge of the cab is right there, so halfway in between or so. Maybe a little to the side of the sensitivity. I'll drill my little hole. Looks like 1/4 inch is probably going to be plenty. We'll pop that in and be done. Just like my buddy at work says, only in the NFL can a 4-5 team take it to an 8-1 team. You never know what you're going to get. It's a great game. Anyway, so I drilled 2 holes. I started with a 3/32 for a pilot hole and then used a 1/4 inch. And it fits great. That's the way to go. It's right in there where it should be. And if I switch high, I'm going to have the high cap. Low will be the low cap. Right in the middle is no bright cap at all. Everything fits really good down in here. Plenty of room for stuff. All the appropriate shrink wrap and whatnot. So, super fun. Be back in the room in a second, and we'll charge it up and see if you can tell a difference.
I'd like to give you a brief description of a bright cap circuit real quick. There are lots of really good explanations on YouTube, but I figure since we're here, we might as well talk about what it is, how it works. So if you'll observe, this here would be your volume pot. All right, one of the tabs is connected to ground. The middle tab's called the wiper because it runs around as you turn the knob. It runs around what looks like a large spring inside, and that gives you the variable resistance, either from 0 to 50K or 500K, or from 500K down to 0 on the other side, depending on which side you connect to. All right. In this case, we've got our wiper here, and we're connected to this tab so that when you turn the volume up, the resistance is going towards 0, and that's why the signal gets louder. That's why you end up with more volume. If you turn the pot down, the resistance goes higher, which means less of the signal is coming through, and that's why the volume drops. Okay, So it's an inverse relationship, you might think. You turn the volume up, resistance goes down, allowing more of this signal to go through the pot. Now, when the resistance is higher, say half volume, we have pretty high resistance, and a lot of the signal is blocked naturally, as you might think about it. As the resistance goes higher, more of the signal coming through is going to be blocked, including bass, mid, and high frequencies. So if we have a bright cap installed, and here we have a choice of two, but bright caps are usually just installed across these two leads here, and capacitors let high frequencies pass through very easily. And depending on the value of the cap, a very small cap is going to allow very high frequencies through. A larger cap, like a 4700 picofarad, is going to allow the high frequencies and some mid frequencies. If you were to get up to a 10,000, then you would be letting highs, mids, and even some lows through. So you can get caps tailored to whatever your specific application is. They're often used for signal conjoining, signal coupling from one device to another. They'll use a capacitor to allow the desired frequencies through, blocking all others, because other frequencies can lead to noise or undesired effects. Okay, so it's pretty simple. As the resistance in this pot gets really high, it's blocking a lot of the signal, so the signal's going to go through one of these caps instead. This cap allows really high frequencies through. This cap allows highs and some mids through. When the resistance in the pot goes low towards zero because the volume is really high or maxed out, there's very little need for the frequencies to take this easy path detour because the resistance in here is so low, they just all run through the pot. So bright caps are less desirable if you're running your amp at max volumes. There is still a little bit of change that takes place, but the change is much less if this volume knob is cranked up, resulting in very little resistance inside. That's allowing most of the signal of all frequencies through. As the volume goes down, resistance in here is going up. Some of your frequencies are forced to take this nice easy route, bypassing the pot. Bass and mids get blocked in here, highs go around. All right, so you end up with what people call a bright cap. And in this situation, we have two. And I'll attempt to demonstrate that now with just having the switch on and off while we play with the volume knob. And I think you'll see that it's more effective when the volume knob is lower. And already I have some opinions about what I like and what I might do next time. So stay tuned for that. So for me, I really mostly live with the volume knob up about noon. That's where I like the tone of this amp. And it still takes pedals, not only a tightening type pedal, and you can make it a little more gnarly, but it also takes an overdrive pedal for leads that you can have turned up, the drive on the pedal turned up too, not just drive to zero and volume up for your lead tone, but volume up and drive up so that you really get that saturated, searing, soaring lead tone with lots of sustain and harmonics, which is cool, which the Orange amps delivered as well. They delivered a really nice overdrive at lower drive settings. You know, the lower overdrive tones were tight. But that's where I live. So with it about halfway up, the bright cap is just a nice brightness change in tone, which is enough to account for going from a Les Paul to a Wolfgang. The Wolfgang guitars are dark compared to especially a new modern Epiphone modern. They're a little on the bright side, where the EVH guitars are a little bit dark. And just that bright switch is enough to account for a lot of that variability without having to tweak the settings too much. On the other hand, that big capacitor, the 4700, I really like the sound of that. It's just aggressive. It's overall kind of tighter. So if I tend towards a harder rock tone, I can click that switch up and it takes me there, which is really cool. So I'm very happy with the mod, and it's super easy to do. The one thing I would consider is in the connections you make inside, think about changing caps in the future as you are in and out of the amp for tube replacements or just whatever. You may want to easily change caps in and out to try different caps, or as you find the values you like the best for you, where you play. And so you could think about that so that you don't have to desolder anything, or at least, I mean, you could solder in a little breadboard type attachment or a couple of sockets. An integrated circuit socket is easy enough to wire in there, and then you could slip caps in and out with just friction. The IC sockets are meant to take an integrated circuit, like an op amp would be an 8-pin, or an opto would even be better. It's a 6-pin, and that would allow you to do some different options with just plugging caps in and pulling them out. You'd never have to solder anything. So that's something to think about. All right. Anyway, thanks for hanging through this video. Thanks for watching. Get in there. Do this mod. The other one I'm considering is a V2 mod. But I don't think I'm going to. You know, the component that you can put in one tube socket and it has 2 tubes in it. They've gotten some coverage on YouTube. Interesting idea, but I've got a DCL that has 4 tubes in it. I've got other amps, so I think I'll leave the JCM as is with this mod. But I am curious about going to maybe a 10,000 picofarad cap. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Old Guy Jamming is out. Enjoy the holidays.